The stalwart horizon moved through the empty darkness of space like a whale swimming through a black ocean. The ship was old but reliable, built for carrying cargo across the long distances between human colonies. Its hull was painted gray and covered with the marks of many years of service. Nothing about it suggested danger or importance. Captain Daniel Vance stood on the bridge with his hands behind his back. He was a tall man in his late 40s, with gray hair at his temples and eyes that had seen too much of the universe. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations with the quiet efficiency of people who had done the same jobs for many years. The bridge was not fancy. The consoles were outdated by military standards. The chairs had patches where the fabric had worn through. A coffee mug with a chip in its rim sat next to the captain's chair. A reminder that this was a working vessel, not a warship. Lieutenant Maria Santos sat at the sensor station, watching the screens with half-closed eyes. She was a small woman with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her job was to watch for anything unusual in the space around them, but nothing unusual ever happened on the Kalari trade corridor. They had been making this same run for 3 years without incident. That changed at exactly 1400 hours. Ship time. A light began blinking on Maria's console. She sat up straight, her tiredness vanishing in an instant. Her fingers moved across the controls as she confirmed what the sensors were telling her. "Captain," she said, keeping her voice calm. "We have a contact. Single vessel, large. It just dropped out of hyperspace about 200,000 kilometers off our port side." Daniel turned to look at her screen. The shape of the other ship appeared as a red outline against the black background. It was much bigger than the horizon, with the angular design that suggested military purpose. "Can you identify it?" Daniel asked. Maria worked her controls for a moment longer. Then her face went pale. "Dexian warship, sir. Raider class." The words spread through the bridge in whispers. Everyone knew what the Dexians were. They had been raiding and enslaving other species for thousands of years, long before humans ever left Earth. They were cruel, efficient, and utterly without mercy. A single Dexian raider had once destroyed an entire colony of 12,000 people, just because they refused to surrender quickly enough. Samuel Wright, the chief engineer, stepped onto the bridge at that moment. He was a big man with thick arms and a beard that never quite looked meat. He had been working on a problem with the secondary coolant system when he heard the alert. "How bad?" he asked, looking at the captain. "Bad enough," Daniel replied. He pressed a button on his chair. "All hands, this is the captain. We have a Dexian vessel approaching. Everyone knows what to do. Stay calm and wait for my signal." Throughout the ship, the 47 crew members of the Starboard Horizon heard the message. In the medical bay, Dr. Patricia Lane stopped what she was doing and took a deep breath. In the navigation room, Kevin Brooks closed his eyes for a moment. In her small cabin near the cargo bay, Security Chief Nicole Edwards set down the book she had been reading and smiled a smile that had no warmth in it at all. On the Dexian warship, Commander Varax studied the scan results of the human vessel. He was an impressive specimen of his species, standing nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and a head covered in natural armor plates. His mandibles clicked together as he processed the information. "Pathetic," he said to his second-in-command, a younger Dexian named Sketh. "Look at this. No weapons. Minimal shielding. Fewer than 50 biological units aboard. This will not even be sport." Sketh made a sound of agreement. "The humans are a young species. They have only been traveling among the stars for 200 of their years. They know nothing of true warfare." Varax pulled up more data on the humans. They were soft creatures, made of meat and water with thin skin that provided no protection. They had no claws, no venom, no natural armor. Their only advantage seemed to be their numbers. But numbers meant nothing against Dexian weapons. "Send a boarding party," Varax commanded. 20 soldiers should be more than enough. Take the crew alive, if possible. Humans fetch a good price in the slave markets of the Outer Rim. The Dexian soldiers assembled in the landing bay of their ship. They were smaller than Varax, but still terrifying by most standards. Each one wore armor that could stop a plasma bolt and carried weapons that could cut through steel. They had conquered hundreds of ships and killed thousands of beings. A human freighter was nothing to them. Their shuttle launched and crossed the distance to the starward horizon in minutes. The humans made no attempt to flee. They did not even try to send a distress signal. This confirmed everything the Dexians believed about them. They were prey animals, frozen with fear, unable to do anything but wait for death. Back on the horizon, Captain Daniel Vance watched the approaching shuttle on the main view screen. His face showed no fear, no anger, no emotion at all. Behind him, Maria Santos monitored the shuttle's approach with the same strange calmness. "They're preparing to cut through the port airlock," Maria reported. Daniel nodded. "Let them." Samuel Wright stood near the door to the bridge, his arms crossed over his chest. "I'll go meet them in the cargo bay." "Take your time," Daniel said. "Let them get comfortable." Samuel walked through the corridors of the ship toward the cargo bay. The other crew members he passed gave him small nods but said nothing. Everyone understood what was about to happen. Everyone was ready. In the cargo bay, Samuel found a crate at a comfortable height and sat down. He pulled an apple from his pocket and took a bite, chewing slowly as he listened to the sound of plasma torches cutting through the airlock door. The Dexians had no idea what they were about to find. Their scanners had shown them a freighter. Their databases had told them about a weak young species. Everything they knew suggested that the next few minutes would be simple and boring. They were wrong. What the Dexian scanners had failed to detect was the neural implant wired into the brain of every human on board. They could not measure the genetic potential that lay dormant in human DNA, waiting to be awakened. They could not read the ancestral memories that floated just below the surface of human consciousness, and they certainly did not know the most important truth about humanity, a truth that would have made them turn their ship around and flee at maximum speed if they had understood it. When humans traveled through dangerous space without weapons, it was never because they were peaceful. It was because they had become something that did not need weapons. The airlock door fell inward with a crash, and 20 Dexian soldiers poured into the cargo bay. Samuel took another bite of his apple and smiled. The Dexian soldiers spread out through the cargo bay with practiced precision. Their weapons swept the room, searching for targets. Their armor gleamed under the harsh industrial lights. They moved like predators entering a den of sleeping prey. What they found instead was a single human male sitting on a crate, eating a piece of fruit. The squad leader, a scarred veteran named Korath, stopped in confusion. This was not how prey was supposed to behave. The human should be hiding, running, begging for mercy. Instead, he sat there chewing his food as if 20 armed soldiers had not just invaded his ship. "You folks lost?" Samuel asked, his mouth half full of apple. Korath's mandibles clicked together in irritation. The translator device in his helmet converted the human's words, but the casual tone made no sense. No being spoke to Dexian soldiers this way. It was unthinkable. "On your feet, creature," Korath commanded. "You are now property of the Dexian Dominion. Resist and you will suffer." Samuel took another bite of his apple. He chewed slowly, looking at the soldiers with something that might have been curiosity. Then he swallowed and shrugged. "Property, huh? That's interesting." He glanced around the cargo bay at the crates and containers. "You know, we're just haulers. Medical supplies mostly. Stuff for the frontier colonies. Nothing valuable. Your cargo is irrelevant," Korath said. You and your crew will be sold. The markets pay well for human workers. You are not strong, but you are clever with your hands. Samuel nodded as if this was perfectly reasonable information. Slave markets, right. I've heard of those. He took another bite of his apple. Can I ask you something? Korath was growing more confused by the second. His soldiers shifted nervously behind him. Something was wrong here, but none of them could identify what it was. Speak, Korath said. Did your scanners tell you anything about humans? I mean, besides the obvious stuff. 2 arms, 2 legs, soft skin. Did they tell you anything about our history? Korath made a dismissive sound. Your species is young. You have no history worth knowing. 200 years among the stars is nothing. We have been conquering worlds for 10,000 years. Samuel finished his apple and set the cord down beside him. 10,000 years. That's a long time. He stood up slowly, brushing off his pants. Here's the thing, though. 10,000 years ago, your ancestors were part of a coalition. A big alliance of younger species who banded together against a common enemy. The soldiers exchanged glances. How did this human know about the ancient wars? That history was forbidden, locked away in the deepest archives of the Vexian homeworld. The enemy was terrible, Samuel continued. They had conquered half the galaxy. They were brutal, unstoppable, and completely without mercy. The coalition had to destroy their entire civilization just to stop them. Burned their worlds, killed billions of them, wiped out almost every trace of their existence. Korath raised his weapon. Enough of this. Seize him. 2 soldiers moved forward and grabbed Samuel's arms. He did not resist. He let them hold him, his body relaxed, his face calm. Captain, Samuel said into the small communicator on his collar. They're here. Throughout the starward horizon, the signal was received. In the medical bay, Dr. Patricia Lane stopped pretending to organize her supplies and stood perfectly still. In the navigation room, Kevin Brooks stepped away from his console. In her cabin, Nicole Edwards put down her book and closed her eyes. In the cargo bay, the lights flickered once. Korath looked up at the ceiling. What is happening? Samuel's eyes changed. The warm brown color seemed to drain away, replaced by something cold and old and terribly patient. His voice dropped to a register that should not have been possible for a human throat. You scanned our ship, Samuel said. The words echoed strangely in the metal room. You saw a freighter. 50 weak mammals. Easy prey. The cargo bay doors slammed shut with a sound like a tomb ceiling. You should have scanned deeper. One of the soldiers holding Samuel's arm suddenly screamed. The sound was cut off almost immediately, replaced by a wet tearing noise. The other soldiers spun around, trying to see what had happened, but the lights had dimmed to almost nothing. In the darkness, shapes moved. Human shapes, but wrong somehow. Too fast, too strong. Their movements made no sound on the metal floor. Patricia Lane appeared behind a Vexian soldier and placed her hand on his armored back. The armor, designed to stop plasma bolts and blade strikes, crumpled like paper under her fingers. She pulled out something vital and let the soldier fall. Kevin Brooks walked through a burst of weapons fire without slowing down. The plasma bolts hit his chest and did nothing. He grabbed the shooter's weapon and bent it in half, then did the same to the shooter. Nicole Edwards moved through the chaos like a ghost made of violence. Every movement was precise. Every strike was fatal. She did not fight like a soldier. She fought like something that had been killing since before soldiers existed. Korath fired his weapon at Samuel, but Samuel was no longer where he had been standing. He was beside Korath now, his hand wrapped around the squad leader's throat. Your coalition thought they killed all of us, Samuel said. His voice was still that deep, ancient rumble. They scattered the survivors across the galaxy and wiped our memories. They hid us on backwater planets and hoped we would never remember. He lifted Korath off the ground with one hand. The Vexian weighed nearly 400 pounds in his armor. Samuel held him like he weighed nothing. They were wrong. Around them, the other soldiers were dying. Not fighting and losing. Dying. The humans moved among them like wolves among sheep, and the result was never in doubt. 30 years ago, we remembered everything, Samuel said to the choking squad leader. We found the truth buried in our own DNA. We discovered what we used to be. He brought Korath close to his face. The Vexian could see that Samuel's eyes were not human anymore. They held depths of memory that stretched back millennia. We used to be your nightmares, Samuel whispered. We used to be the thing that made the galaxy tremble. We used to be called the first civilization, and we were monsters beyond your imagination. He dropped Korath to the floor. The squad leader gasped for breath, looking around at the bodies of his soldiers. All 20 of them lay still. The humans stood among them without a scratch, without a drop of their own blood spilled. Run back to your ship, Samuel said. His voice was returning to normal, the ancient presence fading. Tell your commander what you found here. Tell him the sleepers have awakened. Korath scrambled to his feet and ran for the airlock. Behind him, the humans watched him go with eyes that held 10,000 years of terrible memory. The message would spread. The galaxy would know. Humanity remembered who they were, and humanity was no longer asleep. Captain Daniel Vance walked through the corridors of his ship as the inheritance protocol slowly deactivated throughout his crew. The ancient program was fading back into dormancy, retreating into the hidden places of human genetics where it had waited for so long. He passed the cargo bay and paused at the door. Inside, his people were arranging the bodies of the Vexian soldiers into a neat circle. It was an old tradition, one that none of them consciously remembered, but all of them felt compelled to perform. The first civilization had always honored their defeated enemies this way. Dr. Patricia Lane stood over one of the bodies, her hands still trembling slightly. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gentle hands, a healer who had spent her life trying to save people. Watching her tear through armored soldiers like they were made of paper had been disturbing, even for Daniel. Patricia, he said softly. She looked up at him. Her eyes were wet. I can still feel it, Daniel. The memories. The things we did when we were them. Daniel nodded. He felt it too. They all did. The inheritance did not just give them strength and speed and the ability to survive wounds that should have killed them. It gave them memories. Fragmented, incomplete, but real memories of a civilization that had conquered half the galaxy through sheer, terrifying violence. Come to the medical bay, he said. We should talk. They walked together through the ship. The other crew members they passed had the same look on their faces. A mixture of relief, horror, and something like grief. They had done what needed to be done, but none of them enjoyed it. In the medical bay, Patricia sat down heavily on one of the examination beds. Daniel leaned against the wall and waited for her to speak. I remember a planet, she said finally. Green skies. Twin moons. There was a city there, beautiful and old. And we burned it. We burned it because they refused to submit. Daniel closed his eyes. I remember a fleet. Thousands of ships. We tore through it in hours. Millions dead, and we called it a minor engagement. Patricia looked at her hands. Hands that healed. Hands that had just killed. How do we live with this, Daniel? How do we carry these memories and still be human? It was a question every human had asked since the awakening 30 years ago. The answer was different for each person, but the core of it was always the same. We remember that we chose to be different, Daniel said. Our ancestors were monsters, the worst the galaxy had ever seen. but we are not our ancestors. He walked over and sat beside her. Outside the medical bay window, the stars drifted past, cold and eternal. 30 years ago, when the first scientists discovered the truth, there was chaos. People wanted revenge. They wanted to rebuild the empire, to punish the species that had destroyed us. Some of them formed cults, worshipping the old ways, calling for blood and conquest. Patricia nodded. She remembered those dark days. The world had seemed ready to tear itself apart. But we chose differently, Daniel continued. The majority of us looked at what we had been and decided we did not want to be that again. We built a new civilization, a peaceful one. We trade, we explore, we make art. We raise families and help our neighbors. And when someone forces us to remember, Patricia asked. Daniel's face hardened. Then we remind them why the galaxy tried so hard to destroy us. Not because we want to, because sometimes there is no other choice. On the bridge, Maria Santos was monitoring the Dexian warship. The shuttle had returned to it, carrying the lone survivor of the boarding party. She could only imagine what Korath was telling his commander right now. Kevin Brooks sat at the navigation console, running calculations. His hands were steady, but his eyes had a distant look. He was remembering something from the old days, something about star charts and invasion routes. They're not moving, Maria reported. The warship is just sitting there. They're scared, Kevin said, trying to figure out what to do. Nicole Edwards walked onto the bridge, having cleaned herself up after the cargo bay. She was a tall woman with short hair and the build of someone who exercised religiously. Before the awakening, she had been a librarian. Now she was one of the deadliest beings in the known galaxy. Let them think, she said. The longer they think, the better they understand. Samuel Wright came up behind her, his apple finally finished. The ancient presence had fully retreated from him now, leaving behind only the friendly engineer with the messy beard. You know, he said, I really hate when that happens. The protocol, I mean. It's like being a passenger in my own body. We all hate it, Nicole replied. That's the point. We're supposed to hate it. It's a weapon of last resort, not something to enjoy. Captain Daniel Vance entered the bridge with Patricia beside him. He took his seat in the captain's chair and looked at the image of the Dexian warship on the main screen. Status? He asked. No movement, Maria said. No communications. They're just waiting. Daniel considered this. The Dexians were raiders, bullies, predators who attacked the weak. They had never faced anything like what had just happened on this ship. Their entire worldview was being challenged. Open a channel, he said. Maria's fingers moved across her console. Channel open, sir. Daniel stood and straightened his uniform. He was about to do something that no human had done in 10,000 years. He was about to speak to the galaxy as a representative of the first civilization. Commander Varax, he said, his voice carrying across the void between ships. This is Captain Daniel Vance of the human vessel Starward Horizon. I believe one of your soldiers has a report for you. There was a long pause. Then the view screen flickered and the face of Commander Varax appeared. The Dexian looked different than he had before. The arrogance was gone from his eyes, replaced by something that might have been fear. Human, Varax said. What are you? Daniel smiled. It was not a threatening smile, but there was something ancient in it nonetheless. We are what we have always been, Daniel said. We are humanity, and we would very much like to be left alone. He sat back down in his chair and gestured for Maria to cut the channel. Now they would see what the Dexians decided to do with that information. Commander Varax stood on the bridge of his warship, staring at the blank view screen where the human captain's face had been. Around him, his crew worked in terrified silence. None of them had ever seen their commander look so shaken. Korath knelt on the deck nearby, still trembling from what he had witnessed. The squad leader had seen countless battles in his career. He had killed with his own hands and watched his soldiers die without flinching. But nothing had prepared him for the cargo bay of that human freighter. "Tell me again," Varax commanded. "Tell me exactly what you saw." Korath swallowed hard. "They moved too fast, Commander. Faster than our eyes could track. The female, the small one with the kind face, she tore through armor with her bare hands. The male at the navigation station walked through plasma fire like it was rain. And their eyes changed. They all changed. Like something ancient was looking out through human faces." Varax turned to his tactical officer. "Show me the recordings." The officer pulled up the footage from Korath's helmet camera. The bridge crew watched in silence as the events in the cargo bay played out. They saw the humans transform. They saw the soldiers die. They saw things that should have been impossible. "This cannot be real," the tactical officer whispered, but Varax knew it was real. He knew because he had heard the old stories. Every Vexian commander learned them, passed down through generations as warnings and legends. Stories about the ancient enemy. The first ones. The civilization that had ruled the galaxy with an iron fist before the coalition rose against them. "It is real," Varax said. "The humans are the survivors. The descendants of the first civilization." His crew stared at him in disbelief. "That is impossible," Sketh protested. "The first ones were destroyed 10,000 years ago. Our ancestors made sure of it. They burned every world, killed every. They thought they killed everyone," Varax interrupted. "They were wrong. Some survived. Some were hidden away and made to forget. And now they remember." He looked at the image of the human freighter on his tactical display. Such a small ship. Such ordinary-looking creatures. And yet they had just killed 20 of his best soldiers without taking a single casualty. "What do we do, Commander?" Sketh asked. Varax was silent for a long moment. His instincts screamed at him to attack, to destroy the human ship before they could spread word of what had happened here. But his ancestors' memories whispered caution. The first ones had been unstoppable once. If even a fraction of that power remained in their descendants, attacking would be suicide. "Charge the main weapons," Varax commanded. "Target the human vessel." His weapons officer hesitated. "Commander, our soldiers were still aboard that ship. They are dead. All of them except Korath. I will not leave such a threat at our backs." The weapons officer nodded and began the charging sequence. The great plasma cannons of the Vexian warship hummed to life, gathering energy for a strike that would vaporize the starward horizon in seconds. Then the communication system crackled with an incoming transmission. Captain Daniel Vance appeared on the view screen again. But this time, he was not alone. Behind him stood his entire crew, arranged in the cargo bay. The bodies of the dead Vexian soldiers lay in a perfect circle at their feet. "Commander Varax," Daniel said, "I see you're preparing to fire. Before you do, I want you to understand something." Varax's hand hovered over the firing control. "Speak human." 30 years ago, humanity discovered the truth about ourselves. We found the genetic memories buried in our DNA. We learned that our ancestors were the first civilization, the greatest and most terrible power the galaxy has ever known. Daniel paused, letting that sink in. We also learned how we fell. The coalition of younger species that rose against us. The war that lasted centuries. The genocide that nearly wiped us out. We remember all of it, Commander. Every battle. Every betrayal. Every world that burned. Behind Daniel, his crew stood perfectly still. Their eyes held that ancient look again, millennia of memory shining through modern faces. "Your ancestors helped destroy us," Daniel continued. "The Vexians were part of the coalition, They burned our colonies, killed our children, helped scatter the survivors across the galaxy. According to our old laws, we would be justified in seeking revenge. Varax's hand trembled over the firing control. He could end this now. One button and the human ship would be atoms. But something in the captain's voice made him hesitate. "We chose not to seek revenge," Daniel said. "For 30 years, we have lived peacefully among the stars. We trade, we explore, we help where we can. We made a conscious decision to be better than our ancestors." He stepped closer to the view screen. "But make no mistake, Commander. We have not forgotten who we are. We have not forgotten what we can do. You have seen a taste of it today. 20 of your best soldiers, dead in seconds. And my people have not a scratch on them." Daniel's voice dropped, becoming something older and colder. "There are 8 billion humans on Earth, 12 billion more across our colonies. Every single one of us carries the inheritance. Every single one of us is capable of what you witnessed in that cargo bay." He let silence hang for a moment. "So here is my message for you, Commander. And through you, my message for the Dexian Dominion. And for every species that participated in the destruction of our civilization 10,000 years ago." Daniel Vance, captain of a simple cargo freighter, stood tall and spoke words that would change the galaxy. "We forgive you. We have chosen peace. We ask only to be left alone to live our lives and build our future. But if you force us to remember who we were, if you attack our people and threaten our existence, we will remind you why your ancestors were so afraid of us." He smiled, and it was the smile of something very old wearing a human face. "Do the Dexians truly wish to wake us up again? Do you want to remind us why we stopped being conquerors? Because I promise you, Commander, you will not like the answer." The view screen went dark. Varax stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Then, slowly, he removed his hand from the firing control. "Stand down weapons," he ordered quietly. "Commander?" his tactical officer asked in disbelief. "Stand down weapons," Varax repeated. "Set course for Dexian space. Maximum speed." As his ship turned away from the human freighter, Varax thought about the message he would have to deliver to the Dominion Council. The humans remembered. The first ones lived again, and they were offering peace. He prayed his people would be wise enough to accept it, because if they were not, Varax knew with terrible certainty that no force in the galaxy could protect them from what would follow. The Dexian warship disappeared into hyperspace, leaving the starward horizon alone among the stars. On the bridge, the crew watched their sensors until the last trace of the alien vessel faded away. Only then did they allow themselves to breathe. Captain Daniel Vance slumped back in his chair, suddenly feeling every one of his 48 years. The inheritance protocol had fully deactivated now, leaving behind only exhaustion and the weight of ancient memories. "Maria," he said, "send a coded message to Earth Command. Tell them what happened here. Full details." "Yes, sir." Maria's fingers moved across her console. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her voice remained steady. She had trained for moments like this, even though she had hoped they would never come. The message went out at faster than light speeds, bouncing through relay stations toward the human homeworld. Within hours, the leaders of humanity would know that their secret had been revealed. The galaxy would learn the truth about the quiet, peaceful species that had spread across 100 colony worlds. The humans remembered who they were in the mess hall. The crew gathered for what had become a tradition after every activation of the inheritance protocol. They sat together around the long tables, drinking coffee and talking in low voices. Some cried. Others sat in silence. A few tried to make jokes, but the laughter always died quickly. Samuel Wright sat with his head in his hands. The engineer who could bend steel with his bare fingers now looked like nothing more than a tired, sad man. I hate the memories the most, he said to no one in particular. When the protocol activates, I remember everything we did. Everything our ancestors did. The conquests, the destruction, the billions who died because we wanted power. Patricia Lane sat beside him, her hand on his shoulder. We are not them, Samuel. We carry their memories, but we are not the same people. Are we not? Samuel looked up at her with haunted eyes. When I held that soldier by the throat, when I felt his life draining away, part of me enjoyed it. Part of me remembered doing the same thing 1,000 times before and felt proud. Nicole Edwards sat across the table, nursing a cup of tea that had gone cold an hour ago. That's the curse we carry. The inheritance gives us the power of our ancestors, but it also gives us their darkness. Every time we use it, we have to fight against 10,000 years of instinct telling us to conquer, to destroy, to dominate. Kevin Brooks nodded in agreement. That's why we made the choice we did. 30 years ago, when the truth came out, humanity looked at what we had been and decided we would be different. Not because it was easy, because it was right. Captain Daniel Vance entered the mess hall and poured himself a cup of coffee. He looked at his crew, his family, his fellow inheritors of humanity's terrible legacy. The Lexians will spread the word, he said. Within weeks, every species that participated in our destruction will know the truth. Some will be afraid. Some will be angry. Some might try to finish what their ancestors started. Maria Santos looked up at him. And what will we do? Daniel took a sip of his coffee. It was bitter and strong, exactly how he liked it. We will do what we have been doing for 30 years. We will trade, explore, build, and grow. We will offer friendship to those who want it and leave alone those who do not. We will prove, through our actions, that we are not the monsters our ancestors were. And if they attack us? Nicole asked. Then we will defend ourselves. We will use the inheritance protocol only when there is no other choice, and we will return to peace as quickly as possible. Daniel set down his cup and looked around the room. This is the burden we carry. The knowledge of what we were and the choice to be something better. Outside the viewport, the stars drifted past in their endless dance. Somewhere out there, the message was spreading. The Lexians would tell the other raider species. The raiders would tell the traders. The traders would tell everyone else. The first civilization lived again. But they had chosen peace. Days passed. The starboard horizon continued on its route, delivering medical supplies to frontier colonies as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. At every port, the crew noticed the way other species looked at them. Some with fear. Some with curiosity. Some with a respect that bordered on reverence. On a small station orbiting a gas giant, Daniel met with a Kelari merchant who had been his trading partner for years. The Kelari was a tall, thin being with iridescent scales and large, intelligent eyes. I heard what happened, the Kelari said. Is it true? Are you really the descendants of the first ones? Daniel nodded slowly. It is true. The Kelari was silent for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He bowed his head in a gesture of respect. My people remember the old days, the Kelari said. We remember the terror of the first civilization. But we also remember that when they could have destroyed us completely, they chose to conquer instead. They were cruel, but they were not without honor. He looked up at Daniel with those large, wise eyes. You have chosen better than your ancestors. You offered trade instead of tribute, friendship instead of fear. My people will remember this. We will tell our children that the first ones returned and chose peace. Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. A hope he had not allowed himself to feel until now. Thank you, he said. That means more than you know. Back on the starboard horizon, the crew went about their duties. Samuel repaired a coolant leak. Patricia treated a minor burn from the engine room. Kevin plotted their next course. Nicole read her books. Maria watched the sensors. They were ordinary people doing ordinary things. But beneath the surface, they carried the weight of an empire that had once ruled half the galaxy. They carried memories of conquest and destruction, of power beyond imagination. And they carried the choice they had made. The choice to be different. The choice to be better. As the ship jumped into hyperspace, heading for the next colony on their route, Daniel Vance looked out at the stars and allowed himself to smile. The galaxy knew the truth now. The nightmare had awakened. But the nightmare had chosen to dream of better things. There would be challenges ahead. Some species would never accept humanity's offer of peace. Some would test them, probe them, try to force them back into the role of conquerors. But Daniel believed in his people. He believed in their ability to face the darkness of their past and choose the light, because that was what made them human. Not the power they had inherited, not the memories they carried, but the choice they made every single day to be something more than what they had been. The starward horizon flew on through the endless night. A small ship carrying a crew of quiet people who smiled at strangers and never started fights. Behind them, the galaxy watched on, the galaxy remembered Dot, and slowly, carefully, the galaxy began to hope. The monsters had returned, but they had learned to love. And perhaps, in the end, that would make all the difference.